Hello, Vinay.
Hi,
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, sir. How are you?
Oh, okay, I'm good. So, I called the, this is the meeting, the Friday meeting. I'm trying to revitalize it. I don't know if anyone's going to show up, though, besides you and I. So, but that's okay. I mean, it's just a more informal meeting. So what have you been up to recently?
Sorry?
What have you been up to recently?
Yeah, the other day we were discussing about a talk about machine learning, right? So, in the last 2 days, I'm researching a bit some how ML can be used to mainly focusing on how we can help uh, diagnose mental illness kind of in that areas. That's and then the usual work, like college and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, so you're telling me about this machine learning talk. So this is something you're going to present at one of the, like in one of your local venues, or
Yeah, yeah.
and so you have a. I don't know a lot about like when you say machine learning is used to diagnose mental illness. I'm not sure too much about that area. I know that there's been some work on like neuroimaging and machine learning, and I'm not really sure about the part where you would.
Please go on.
Oh no, I kind of finished my thought there. So
Oh, about neural imaging, right? Like, what do they use actually when they take an fMRI image? So, in what will they try to assess? Like, do they look about? Do they try to find out if there are any holes or something like that? Some sketch scans, fMRI images.
yeah, well, they might try to find like they'll get data from like a control group, and they'll get data from like a known group of people with mental illness like schizophrenia, and they'll compare the images or they'll compare the data for similarities and differences. So the one idea is that brain networks are dysregulated, so they're differentially active. And so if you can use fMRI data to reconstruct a brain network and look at the different areas that are activated at different times, and then you can because it's a lot of data. It's they acquire images on the millisecond scale, so you're going to have a lot of images that you would acquire from both the control and the subject or patient population, and then you would look for differences there. But it's a matter of you have to use some sort of machine learning probably, because just applying like standard t-tests isn't really going to cut it for something like that. But I don't know, like if maybe people apply deep learning as well on data sets like that. But I think like and then there are other diagnostic markers that are like different areas of the brain are active or not active. But that's more. I don't know if that's something that you can get at with machine learning so much. Then there's also like data like EEG data, which is where they measure electrical potentials, or they're not potentials, but electrical field activity along the scalp. Sometimes in clinical populations, they can put electrodes into the brain itself, but for the most part, it's on the scalp, and they can build models of local field potentials, and that's also another indicator of potentially of something like mental illness or any other cognitive thing you want to look at. But that's another area where you have a lot of data. A lot of the current caps that they have of like 256 recording sites, and so you have 256 by 256 matrices for something in the millisecond scale, and then
Yeah.
you can measure out for like several minutes, and that's a lot of data. You can simulate an activity, either just like kind of like a static activity, or they engage the subject in some task and they measure against the control, what it looks like. And so again, that would require, I think, machine learning to pull out patterns from that.
Yeah. That sounds interesting actually. So I was the thing that you mentioned about ECG data. So I just saw that I seen some articles. I should dig in more actually. So I'll probably include some of a few points from what you told now in the presentation.
Yeah. I mean, there should be stuff in the. I mean, if you look for those terms that I mentioned, you'll be able to find something, I'm sure. I know there's been like probably work on it, but I don't know. I can't put my fingers on any papers.
Yeah. And should I ping Ujjwal or someone if they are online or something?
Yeah, why don't you ping them? Maybe they'll show up.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen Mayuk's work on movement tracking.
Research paper.
Well, he did some work on movement tracking like last week. He actually developed like it's like he was looking at the OpenWorm's Terpsy tracker, and so they
The
have
project with where Mayuk is working. Is that what you're talking about?
well, he was working on something related to like the. So his project is different from this, but this is like a project in OpenWorm Terpsy tracker, and they have they measure movement in worms, so they get these microscopy images of the worms moving around on a plate, and then they can segment the worm and the movements. And he was working on a lightweight version of that, and he presented like at Monday's meeting. He did a little bit of presenting on it, and he pushed a lot of stuff to his GSOC repository. And I don't know. I mean, it looked interesting.
Yeah, good.
Let me see if we get a message from them.
I just pinged Ujjwal on Slack.
Okay.
And like, how is it in the US? Like, Corona, is it like too much right now?
Well, there's some pretty bad areas, like they're hotspots. Here, it's not so bad. People are nervous, of course, but it's been pretty bad in terms of the government response and all that. So we've had different states have different they've responded to it differently. So our state has actually been pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Well, I haven't heard from him yet. Oh, there's Ujjwal. Hi, Ujjwal.
Hello, guys.
Glad you could make it.
Yes, like internet is working fine. Luckily.
Yeah.
How is it in now in Kolkata? Is it, are you like, is your area fine? I've seen the news, like it's is the cyclone and stuff. How is it now?
I talked to him like yesterday, and the things he was telling us, like the things are pretty bad. There was complete blackout in his city. So, like after that, we didn't talk. But yeah, he is safe as I know.
Oh, fine.
Well, I'm glad everything worked out. I don't know how many, if there was a lot of destruction, a lot of deaths. I know we were talking about it Monday. Looked pretty bad on the from what I saw from very far away. So Ujjwal, did you have anything to update us on?
Like recently, I have started working on the blog, and I have also sent you the file for the paper update. And like my paper is kind of preponed. My semester exams are preponed, and it will be going to over around 24th May. That is this Sunday. And after 24th May, like I will completely start working on the GSOC project.
Okay, yeah, well, that's good. Yeah, I got the message on Slack about the document for the revisions for the paper. So Vinay actually probably I don't know if you got the email about this, but the Basel area paper was accepted, and so we have to do a couple of revisions to it. They want a couple of things updated and changed. It's actually quite little work compared to what you usually have to do for papers. Sometimes you have to revise papers significantly to get them accepted, or sometimes not even accepted. But it's this is a pretty good. I think we're in a pretty good situation with this. So we just have to do a couple more light revisions. Ujjwal is going to prepare some material for the pre-trained model that they used last year on the Basel area data. So we'll get a little bit more. I think what happened was I pulled some of it out to put in like a supplemental file, but they wanted a little bit more detail in the main document. But I think it would be good to have like a separate thing that because this is like sort of a very broad summary of what was done. We can point them to the very technical file that we have on the web. But I think that's good. So Ujjwal, he's got this document that he's going to prepare. And then we'll work on a couple of the other things with some other people, and then we'll send it back. It shouldn't take too long. That'll be good.
Yeah, I've seen the mail regarding that. Congrats, actually.
Yeah. So that's good. Then we have a couple of other. We're going to continue with the Basel area. Work on another paper on the behavior of Basel area. So that'll be upcoming. I think I talked about it briefly in the Monday meetings. So in the Monday meetings, I kind of talked a little bit about the outline of what we might do for the behavioral aspect of it. So this is not just the morphology, this is the behavior. And so one of the things, if you remember from the first paper, is that there's this oscillatory movement of the colony. And so it expands and it contracts like this. And so that sine wave can be used to like get a handle on the behavior. And there might be some opportunities to do some simulations of that behavior and characterize it a little bit more. And people have characterized they've kind of characterized the behavior in terms of like biophysics, but they've never really characterized it in terms of like just collective behavior. So it'd be interesting to see. We'll have to talk about that more in the Monday meeting.
I will go through like I haven't seen the meeting right now, or Monday's meeting. I have missed one, so I will go through it and let you know.
Yeah,
Do.
that'd be fine. Yeah, it's a good idea just to go through. I don't know this last Monday if we talked about it too much. I think we might have. So that should be good. I don't know if Mayoka's around, but that's okay. I just wanted to get an update, but I think we already did an update Monday, so I don't think it matters too much. Let's see. Another thing I wanted to point to here. Actually, why don't I share my screen here? I don't know if we talked about this, but yeah, we did talk about it a little bit. So Ujjwal is organizing his project on a separate platform, like some of the broad contours of it. And it probably makes sense for his project. But I wanted to kind of go to the project board for GSOC. So GSOC has a project board. I think I've added to this since I last brought this up. So here's the okay. Okay, this is it here. Can you see my screen? So
Yeah.
okay. So this is the board, and this is the link to it. Yeah, okay, good. I don't remember if I added ever. Oh, I don't have it open in the right account, but I think I've added you as collaborators. I'm not sure, but if you've gotten an email, so this is how you do collaborators. If you go to Insights, and I think you go to Contributors on this board. Okay, well we have Mayok was in in this repository, so I think he's in here as a contributor already. So this is the community tab. I think is actually what I want. I'm not sure if it is. Okay, is it commits code frequency? It's one of these tabs, and I don't know why it's not coming up. Oh, because I'm probably not logged into the right account. But if you go into the project, you can assign collaborators. And I may have sent an email. I may have to resend it to both of you.
I got that mail. I have accepted to collaborate on the
Okay.
GitHub.
Okay, so let's see if it lets me add people to the.
I don't think I got the mail, but I'll check once again.
All right. So this is the board, and I think I've added you all as collaborators. So, and then this is the design evaluation for the layout. So these are the tasks, and I've been putting together like different. So the mural board, of course, is Ujjwal's suggested mode of updating on his project, but we want to also do issues in this board too, because we want to have. And I'm thinking more along the lines of like maybe things that you would present to the group, or like deadlines for the group. So if you want to keep your mural board updated and maybe share it with us in the meetings, that's fine. And then keeping track of all the nuts and bolts of your project. But for things that we want to,
I will share Miro board link on the Slack channel.
Okay, that sounds good. And then, but we want to put the things like, milestones for the group in here, like, maybe updates, or we might want a large scale progress report, or if we're going to implement something, then we can put it on this board. So this is the office hours discussion section that's actually done. Movement tracking with machine learning, that was what Mayok is doing. Weekly blog posts, so that's in progress. Assign something to Krishna Katyal. I've yet to do that, and I will do that soon. So those are our issues right now. I think they're probably more as the community period churns on. Thank you for showing up at the office hours on Wednesday. Thank you. I think that was pretty good. And the office hours will be archived in the Slack channel, so people can come by and read it. I think that's going to be useful for people if they want to. We have the video from like 2 weeks ago, but then we also have kind of a discussion of the project in text, and sometimes it's easier for people to make the connection, get to links. What else? Oh, we have a pull request here. So, okay, so this was Mayuk again. He put another pull request up, so that's good. I'll accept that in a bit. But that's good. So yeah, he's been working on this feature tracking notebook. So like I said, it's a slimmed down version of Terpsy Tracker. So he actually sent me a GIF. I don't have it with me, but it's in on Slack, where he's able to track the worm body, an adult worm. He went to the movement database, which is something that OpenWorm is running, and he basically started analyzing videos there. And I think that it's a good exercise in segmenting the worm, but also in kind of getting a handle on the movement features and things like that. But he says it's a lighter version of Terpsy Tracker, which might actually be useful in some of the embryogenesis stuff. So in embryogenesis, people look at, like, there's movement in the embryo of the cells during development, but there's also, right at the end of embryogenesis, there's muscle twitching that happens. So when the muscles start forming, there are these cells that fuse together into muscle, and the muscles start to fire spontaneously before they get any connections from the connectome. And so eventually they'll get connected to the connectome, and they'll move in accordance with some coordinated behavior. But before that, they do this spontaneous twitching. And so nobody knows if the spontaneous twitching is really a functional thing, or if it's just the muscle starting to kick in. But it's maybe an interesting thing to look at with something like that. I don't know. So, see what else we have in here. We might go to the. Let's see. I think we have. Group meetings. I wanted to go to that. Wanted to go over some of the projects here, or this projects tab. Major tasks for 2020. I think I got a chance this Monday, but so as you can see, we've gotten a lot of stuff done here. And then we have a lot of things in progress. We're still working on that axolotl data I showed a couple weeks ago in the Monday meeting. The revisions for the basilaria paper. This is today's meeting. I'm trying to revitalize it, so we're kind of in progress on that, literally. So this create a doc for open collaboration of papers. So that's something you may have not seen on. Well, it's in Monday's meeting, but I would point it out to you. There's a. I'm creating this open sort of directory of group papers, and so what this is there are all these papers that kind of started up, or different topics that we're kind of exploring. And the idea is to create a group document that people can go into and maybe contribute if they feel like it. So if there's a paper that, sounds interesting, you can either go to the Google Doc link and ask for permissions, or go to the GitHub repo, which often has either an outline or some text in Markdown in it. So like this one here, collective pattern generators, if you go into it, let's see, this is the repository, and it's an outline of a paper. This is actually one of the ideas that we have for the Basileria behavioral analysis. So this is the main idea is in C. elegans, you have something called a central pattern generator, and it's basically a small group of neurons that create this pacemaker. So a pacemaker is like when your heart muscle pumps, and your heart pumps, and it's rhythmic, and the rhythm is created by these central pattern generators. So there's this group of neurons that create this, cyclical wave of movement in the muscle or whatever, and it's regulated in time, so it just keeps going and going and going, and there's no, it doesn't, and sometimes it eventually needs to be entrained by other things, but it's basically generating a pattern. And these are actually kind of theoretical objects because some people question whether they actually exist, but that's not for this paper. The idea is that you have this neural circuit that forms from neurons that are, firing action potentials, and they're coordinating their activity. In Basileria, we don't have action potentials, or we don't have neurons, but what we do have are cellular structures. We have actin filaments. We have other things that generate movement. And so we know from observing the behavior that we have this rhythmic movement. And so we're proposing that there's this collective pattern generator, which is generated from collective and coordinated behavior. And so there's no central nervous system or brain, but you get these rhythmic behaviors. So the paper kind of walks through this. And then there's a modeling aspect to this, where modeling sine waves at different phases, and adding noise, charting on an attractor map. It's just a very theoretical exercise, but this is going to evolve into something where we're simulating this movement, not so much the colony itself, but like the sort of the movement patterns that they generate. And so we can use some forms of analysis to understand this better. We may be able to use algorithmic information theory to see, to understand like this behavior, if it's random or if it's like there's something else to it. So, and then there are references here. So, the contributions here would be to make notes on, if this idea can be improved, or if there's an analysis that can be done. And here we have image files that show some of these figures that are in this outline. So that's a big circle. It's supposed to be an attractor basin, but we're going to flesh that out later. And then we have other, there's some simulation code. This is where the sine waves are created, and so forth. So there's a lot of stuff in these repositories that are, can be contributed to, or if we have, new ideas, we can put them on this list. So But I think that, so back to the projects for the group meetings, I think that was one of the big tasks that I had highlighted. And then this is, reorganized DevoZoo. It's part of Ujjwal's project. Community period activities are going along for GSOC. Then there's embryo visualization for Docker, which is the thing where we're creating a simulation. And I know Ujjwal has been working on a simulation. He's been working on the CC3D simulation platform, which I think there's another issue for in here. I can't remember where it is. But, here it is, this one. So these issues are maybe kind of linked, depending on how Ujjwal's doing on the CC3D simulations. Did you have any updates on that?
Oh yes, like I'm trying to get through the XML files and trying to make simulation more and more realistic. But like as far as I'm progressing, like the shortcomings of CC3D is coming and it is being explored. I'm exploring that software more and more. So I think like I will be able to see show the results, final results maybe in 2-3 weeks.
Yeah, that's good. So I'll look forward to that. And I think, it's like one of these things, there's a learning curve to it. So, it'd take a while to like figure out how to use it. I think that's why we haven't really moved on it in like 5 years. It had been 5 years ago, we were talking about using it and we never really did anything with it. But now I think we're getting to the point where we can, really kind of start building on it. Once we get, I think, a learning curve, and maybe we can get some, maybe we can create some tutorial materials once you have something mastered. I don't know how you feel about that, but it would be like, showing like a demo where you would say, maybe like a demo you would record for the community, and you'd say, here's how you do this thing, here's how we implement this model. And it's good if you're going to apply it to some paper or some other thing that you want to build in it. We can have that out for people so they can see that there's
Yes,
yeah.
I think like the documentation on the CC3D part is like something which needs to be improved. So yeah, we can try to make models and make tutorials on that.
Okay. Yeah, it's like, I don't want you to go down the rabbit hole on that, but just kind of, we'll probably, when the time comes, if there's something that we want to, like, it's like you could just show people, like, how to do, build a little circle, but that's not really useful. It's just kind of like walk them through a bit. Maybe we can do it in this meeting where we would have like, you would walk through like a model and then we'd ask questions. That sometimes were useful just in terms of like, people walking through it. But I think, the documentation, I didn't get the sense it was very good. It's like if you're coming at it as an amateur, it's like, or someone hasn't used it before, it's very hard to get like to get started and going. So
Yes, exactly. Like there are difficulties for the amateur person to get all the things at one place.
yeah, so it's good. So we'll revisit that in a bit. The Docker container, of course, is the OpenWorm Docker container. So maybe we can add some of that to the Docker container. We can create a simulation that then we can, I don't know how we add it in, but we at least talk to Steven Larson, who's kind of heading up that initiative, and he'll give us some guidance on that. Because like I don't know how they're developing this. It's basically the Docker container. You download this container, you run it on your computer, and it runs through all of the OpenWorm simulations. So they have like a little bit of cybernetic, which is the biophysics model. They have a little bit of C302. They have a little bit of Geppetto, and so they run through all these models and they kind of have a showcase for it. And then, we don't have anything, but it's I didn't know what to put in at first, and I think this might work. But But the first thing is the learning curve, and then the other thing is getting that together. So, what else? I think that's it for the board. I mean, there's stuff on here that I don't really know what it is. I think we've done this one, the GSOC student presentations. Yeah, and then this is something that Jesse expressed interest in. Yeah, so there's that. So, either of you have any questions or comments?
Nothing actually. I said.
Okay.
It's good actually.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ujjwal. Is Moderna vaccine working? I've heard mixed reviews about them. I don't know if it's. I haven't heard anything like super positive about either one. But they're trying different things. And, the clinical trials will be like at the end of the test. But I haven't heard anything super positive about that. So. Of course, I'm not like super up to date on everything. I just kind of catch things as they come by the news. Okay. Yeah. So the coding period is officially going to start at the end of the month. So if you want to get a head start, that's fine. We'll be, doing our weekly check-ins. So generally once a week, I want to get like a short update and maybe a demo if it's appropriate. Probably when we get into the coding period, we'll have demos more. I mean, like Vinay knows, and Ujjwal, I think we did this sort of thing last year with Basilaria. Just if you have a demo, you can bring it. If not, it's just a short check-in. If you have problems or if you have successes. I do want to hear about the successes too, like if you have like a good, like something really worked out, and even if it's not within the context of your project, maybe we can put it aside for later, but we want to know what it is. So I'm going to present a short talk on Tuesday to the INCF about the GSOC operations. So like I'm going to do I'm going to kind of give people some advice about how to do GSOC as a mentor. So I've been working on the slides for that. It's it's just kind of recapping kind of successes and maybe what not to do. But I think it'll be interesting. They're going to do they're kind of doing more. I think they're trying to help mentors more. I think they've gotten feedback about that, so they want people who've done this multiple times to give people maybe done it for the first time some advice, which is good. So.
ICF has also invited, I guess, students on 27th May, 7:30 p.m. IST.
Yeah.
for a week, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
August 26th, I guess. It is on 26th.
Yeah, the 20th. That
It's
meeting
called
on the 26th. Yeah. I don't know what time it
Like,
is in your place. Yeah, so it should be probably an evening for you, maybe late afternoon. But yeah, you should swing by if I don't know. I guess everyone's invited if you get the link. So it's like it's for a lot of. But I think the idea is to get people oriented towards GSOC, and I think probably students would benefit because you get to hear kind of what to expect, and then their best practices, um, you know, that everyone should adhere to. I think it makes it easier if everyone understands what the expectations are for that. So we don't talk about best practices much here, but like there is a definite like people talk about them a lot, but they don't really know what they are. Like they don't just say what they are. um, the best practices, of course, are like people establish things that work well, and then everyone in the community sort of adheres to it. The problem with it, I think, is that there's a lot of talk about it as if like if you just say it and you maybe post them somewhere, it works. That people don't have a lot of needs. Like if I said we had a community standard where everyone is going to use like Python and we're going to use a certain type of visualization, or you know, we've sort of had that standard with Jupyter notebooks, but like people may prefer Colab for some things, especially machine learning. And then okay, so we'll use Colab, and then we have like a mix of notebook types, and then anything that's based on that best practices with Jupyter notebooks may or may not translate to Colab, and so it kind of drifts off as your work evolves, and it's not that like you're not paying attention to the best practices. It's just that they don't uh, they don't map well to your organization over time. So I might have to bring that up in this talk. I forgot about that. So I'll probably make a note to myself to do that because I think people talk about it a lot, but they don't really. I think it's easy to talk about. It's harder to actually make them useful for people. So. Okay, well, I'm gonna go get going. I get another meeting at noon, so.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay, so talk to you guys later. Yeah, stay safe.